bit of a different in-studio setup today, and I'm surrounded by hospital administration. We have Cameron Renwick from the Board of Directors for Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare, and on my right side we have Natalie, who's the Executive Director of Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare. So thank you very much for coming in, both of you. We are trying to respect COVID rules, so keeping you separated. Unfortunately, we can't have a wide shot of everyone right now because we just don't have the camera space for it. But we did want to talk today about what's happening with the hospital sites moving forward. And just a little bit of background before I jump into you both. There was an update recently from Infrastructure Ontario, which stated a lot of the projects that were moving forward, hospitals and otherwise, and unfortunately MAHC seemed to be at the very sort of footnote bottom of in development, but no current updates available. So I guess I'll start, Natalie, with you on this. And so where are we at right now? Because it's about a year since we've had this final approval on the two sites. We've nailed that down. Where are we now at this point?
Great, so happy to answer that. So I'm actually glad that we're even on the list, even though it may be at the very bottom. So it's been about 11 months. So back last November, we actually submitted the capital redevelopment plan to the capital branch at the Ministry of Health. Since then, we have had a number of questions that have come back to us back in around June of this year. And we've responded to that list of questions, and there's been another further couple of clarifications, and we're now just waiting for the go-ahead to move to stage 2.
Okay. So Cameron, I'm going to switch over to you now. Sure. Move to my left here. So I want to talk about this process from infrastructure and you know, where the board stands on this. You know, you had agreed to the two hospital site. We figured that was going to kind of move things forward, but we seem to be in almost a standstill movement right now. So where is the board in this, and how do you, how do you communicate, I guess, with the government to see if it's going to move forward?
Sure. Well, we've communicated exactly as Natalie said. We made our submission at the end of November of last year. There is no set time that they are obliged to respond to you. So I think, realistically, to get feedback in May of this year, with all the challenges that have been going on with the pandemic, is actually quite timely. So I'm enthused by how quickly they got back to us, how quickly we responded to the questions and their response to our questions. So I think we can all feel pretty good about that. I will say that the board is fully behind the two-site model, and that has been, I think we've said that a number of times on your show and in other, media releases that we lay out there. So let's make sure everybody understands that. Moving forward, we are working with regards to what the municipal share is going to be. And so there are members of the board and elected officials from our municipalities and from towns, reeves. So that work is starting. But we can't go too much further until we get some feedback from the ministry.
Yeah, as mentioned before, I think we're in a sort of standstill motion because we want to know how much these shares are going to be, right? We want to know what this cost is going to be, because if you can break down the numbers for me again, what specifically was going to happen between municipalities and government.
Yeah, I can't give you an answer on what the municipalities and the governments are going to do. That's something that is forthcoming. The numbers that we presented, which are public and on our website, talk about a local share of 129 million for both hospitals. When you take out the 35 million in transferable assets, when you take the two foundations which are giving over and above what they already do, 10 million, that number then comes down to about 74 million. So that's the amount that we're going to be looking for. And I'm sure that number will change as time goes on. But right now, that's our firm number.
Okay. Now, is that just district number, or is this what we're in discussion of right now? Is that going to be just a district sort of tax sort of, you know.
If the district gave us $74 million, then it would be a pretty quick conversation. I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
I mean, everybody has to have skin in the game here.
That's what I mean. Are there other municipalities that are going to be involved as well?
Sure, and we've got full support from all of our municipalities, people that serve, people that would feed into either of our two sites. So
were you talking about Omagwin as well then?
Yes, actually I have. We presented a town hall at Omagwin, and a person in the audience stood up and said, I know that I don't normally say I want to increase my taxes, but how can I make sure that I'm going to be contributing? So I think people are behind this. Okay.
Natalie, just coming back to you again. Sure. What are the concerns right now in terms of these sites? Because they are aging. There are issues. This is why we were looking at a new hospital site, right?
Yeah.
What are the immediate concerns right now, and what could be a concern in the near future here if this doesn't start to move forward soon?
Well, we have a number of concerns, and I think that's the reason why we're looking at capital redevelopment, and mostly is the fact that we really have fixed assets right now. We don't have a lot of flexibility, and the design of the both of the sites don't really help support us in this new type of a pandemic world that we've got. So we've got space constraints. We don't have different accesses to go into the hospital to be able to separate streams of traffic. Our emergency departments at both sites are undersized right now for the volumes we're currently seeing, let alone the IPAC guidelines that we need to adhere to in terms of how we're streaming the volumes of people coming in through our emergency department. So we've got concerns around IPAC. We're doing a lot of internal renovations to try to help support us with that. So actually, in some ways, the pandemic is not good news, but it's helping us in terms of our argument with the capital branch around the need for why we need to redevelop and have two new hospitals. This is further just demonstrating some of the issues we have with the assets we do have and the constraints that our frontline staff are facing. So we need to move ahead. Our structures are just too old to help us.
Well, I don't want to force either of you to put the government in a negative light, because that's where the money is obviously coming from. But do you feel that there might be a sort of, for lack of a better term, I guess, sort of lack of concern from the government on these sites right now versus other projects? Because other projects are getting moved forward, and if you kind of look through the list, they were put through at the same time that, or even later than MAC was. So. Do you feel there might be some sort of, I'm struggling to find the term here, but is the government not putting this as a priority over other projects? Because it is a major project for our area, right?
Yeah. I really can't speak to what the government is thinking right now in terms of how they're prioritizing, but one of the things I can say is that I do believe the government does have to prioritize. There's a lot of people out there and a lot of organizations that have capital redevelopment needs, and we do know, based on this pandemic, the concerns that we've seen in long-term care around some of the structures there. And it may very well be that that will become the priority for the government in the very near future, and then other projects prioritized after that. And I can understand that based on what we've all read and what we understand has been occurring in the long-term care sector up to now.
So, Cameron, I'll come back to you. Is that a concern, maybe, that the money might start drying up before this even gets into motion?
It's always a concern. I agree with what Natalie has said, and I think too that we heard loud and clear that people want to have two hospitals. That was as loud as it could be. So I think the sooner we all can rally behind, this is what we want, here's what we need, why we deserve it, and we show the ministry that we are all collectively rowing in the same direction. If I was in government and I was looking at communities that were, struggling to get people rallied around, I don't know if I necessarily would be saying, okay, let's go and throw money there. So I think the sooner we can all come together, and I'm not saying we're not, but I think the more we can show that we're unified, the better it's going to be. Okay, last question for probably both of you here, and you might need to correct me if I'm wrong or dust off my memory a bit here, because it has been a year. In terms of the sites, there was an agreement that the Huntsville site would be in that same area where Huntsville Hospital is right now. The Bracebridge site, the South Muskoka site, I think it was still
undecided. Is that still right, or have we finalized a site plan for the new site?
We have not finalized the site plan, but
Yeah.
what we have finalized was part of the submission that it would be in a greenfield site.
Okay.
So it would not be at the existing site right now in the middle of the town of Bracebridge.
So further to that, do we have a closer idea of where it might be ending up, basically, in Bracebridge?
Well, that's part of what would happen in stage 2, and
Okay.
we would actually look at site selection. So we have had an offer of land that has come forward, and it would be one of the areas that we would be examining very closely when we get the direction to move ahead to stage 2.
Fantastic. I did want to clarify that point because, again, if I'm not remembering, I'm sure other people are kind of forgetting too. It's been quite a little bit of time. Listen, thank you very much, both of you, for coming in. I appreciate the time that you take to do this, and really hoping that we get some good news eventually soon on the funding. So
Thank you for the opportunity.
thank you very much.
Thank you.